Relationships start to really suffer when things like this start to happen. When we stop trying to have the hard conversations, when we avoid conflict and create peace at all costs. The truth is, we get stuck in patterns of self protection. We avoid speaking up because we don't want to rock the boat. We convince ourselves it's not worth the fight, but in doing so, I've learned over many years of doing therapy with folks in the therapy room that you lose something really important. You lose the holy grail of relationships, which is the ability to be authentically known, deeply known, and to know someone else. Today, I want to talk about vulnerability. Yes, honest, courageous, scary vulnerability. How we can break patterns of self-protection and heal relationships and bring people into our lives in closer, deeper relationships. And this is personal for me. There's a big period of my life where I avoided bringing things up that really mattered in relationships. And I didn't want the tension or the fight in the moment. I thought maybe I'll just let this go and things will get better on their own, but they don't. They build and they fester until something bigger happens. And it creates distance and lack of authenticity in relationships. It's not till we start practicing vulnerability, sharing our feelings honestly, even when it's uncomfortable, that things begin to change. Vulnerability, it's not just about fixing relationships. It's about showing up for yourself, aligning with your values, and giving people a chance to know you. And I believe that through this approach that I've created called REWIRE, that we can learn to wield this skill of vulnerability in a way that is really effective and helpful. Hey, I'm Dr. Andrew Smith. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm a professor. I'm the author, the designer of REWIRE. It's a platform for anyone seeking deeper, more meaningful connections. Maybe you've tried mental health therapies in the past and there just wasn't enough focus on things that really mattered to you, like how your way of being plays out in relationships and how you can make relationships stronger. That's why we developed REWIRE as an alternative approach to going in and looking at pure symptom focus, for example, depression symptoms or anxiety symptoms, and saying, maybe if we work towards deeper, more meaningful connections and relationships, your symptoms will dissipate or they will lessen and your life will come to feel more meaningful. And that's exactly what the evidence about REWIRE shows, is that when we focus on core relationships and showing up in healthy ways, our lives improve through this REWIRE approach. And you don't have to wait until the stars align to start making a change now. We have a free plan builder and relationship health assessment that we offer at rewirewellness.co. The link is in the description. There's also a free guide that you can start enacting the things that I'll be talking about today. But today I'm here to talk about vulnerability specifically, and I'm going to cover it in 3 parts. Number 1, why do we get stuck in patterns of self-protection? Number 2, how vulnerability breaks patterns of self-protection, creates empathy and connection. And number 3, a skill set for using vulnerability to heal and strengthen your relationships step by step. So let's start with part 1. Why do we get stuck in patterns of self-protection? Think about this. I want you to kind of ask yourself this question. How often do you avoid difficult topics, speaking up about something that's bothering you? How often do you let it fester to a point that it's really hard to communicate about, and the conflict that comes with it is too much to bear? Here's the truth. Avoiding pain, avoiding disclosing what's going on with you internally, it doesn't make it go away. It makes it build, and over time it creates distance. One of 2 things happens. We internalize that pain, and it eats us away from the inside out, and it creates things like depression. Another way that it plays out is we externalize that pain. We struggle with, for example, anger in a way that harms, that pushes against the values and the goals that we have for our relationships. I don't know anybody that has a goal to act out of anger towards people that they love. So let me give you an example. Imagine this. You're feeling hurt because your partner seems more focused on their phone than you during dinner. You're sitting across from them, hoping for connection and some quality time, but instead what you're met with is silence and scrolling. You might be thinking, why don't they care about this time together? They're missing this. Instead of saying, I feel hurt when it seems like your phone is getting your attention instead of this quality time, you just sit there quietly simmering and you tell yourself, it's no big deal, I'll let it go. Or you stonewall. The hurt doesn't go away though, it lingers. And over time, that small moment of silence becomes a wall. Now think about a friendship where your friend keeps canceling plans. You're excited to see them, but at the last minute, you get that dreaded text. Something came up. Rain check? It hurts. But instead of telling them, it makes me feel unimportant when you cancel, you decide to stop reaching out altogether and convince yourself, I guess I don't need them anyway, or they don't want to spend time with me. These moments of avoidance are really about self-protection. We're trying to avoid rejection and conflict, but what we're really doing is creating a pattern of disconnection. So I just want that to come through. Withdrawing from those moments and those relationships is really a self-protective mechanism, and I get it. I'm as guilty of this as anybody. But that's exactly what it is, and it keeps our relationships either stuck or it keeps us from being able to deepen and strengthen relationships that can come through a deeper honesty. So let's move to part 2. If that's the problem, if self-protection and avoidance of pain, which are totally natural, if that's the problem, how does vulnerability, part 2, how does vulnerability break these patterns? Here's where it comes in. Vulnerability is the act of stepping into discomfort and sharing your inner world, your fears, your pain, your wants, your needs, and sharing that with someone else. Let me show you how this could play out. Imagine you decide to tell your partner, I've been feeling distant from you lately and I miss spending time together. At first, you might get a defensive reaction. Look, I've been so busy. Don't you see how much I'm doing for us, for our life? But instead of shutting down, you then respond, I know you're working hard and I appreciate it, but I need us. I need to feel close to you. I need us to set aside some quality time together. That's vulnerability. And the reason that it's vulnerability is because you're risking something. You're risking rejection, but you're also giving your partner the opportunity to show up for you. And when they do, something powerful happens. You begin to break the pattern of distance. You replace silence with honesty, avoidance with connection. You create an opportunity for deeper healing instead of further separation. Okay, let's move to part 3. Here's the skill set to vulnerable communication. How can you start practicing vulnerability? Let's do this step by step. Number 1, notice your feelings. Pay attention to moments when you feel hurt, frustrated, or withdrawn. This is a mindfulness of what's going on inside of you. Number 2, acknowledge your emotions. Name them to the other person. For example, I feel hurt. I feel lonely. Number 3, allow for their response. Vulnerability, it's a process, and vulnerability really plays on the empathy of somebody that cares about us. So they might not respond perfectly, and that's okay. Number 4, give feedback. Reinforce empathy. Thank you for hearing me, or gently express pain. Your reaction actually made me feel dismissed or invalidated. Number 5, create space. Let the other person process. Vulnerability, it plants seeds. It doesn't force change always immediately, especially if you've got a long pattern with somebody, like let's say a 20-year marriage or a 5-year dating relationship. And number 6, return to the conversation if needed. If the conversation doesn't resolve, if you express a need or want and the other person is unable to field that with empathy, agree with yourself to return back to the conversation to give another chance. By practicing these 6 steps, you create new patterns in your relationships that are built on trust, empathy, and mutual growth. So here's the takeaway. Vulnerability, it's not weakness. It's actually deep courage. It's the key to breaking patterns of avoidance and building deeper, more meaningful relationships. It's not easy. It takes courage, patience, honesty. But when you show up vulnerably, you give the people in your life the opportunity to truly see you, to have empathy, to tap into their own compassion and empathy for you, and to meet you where you are. If you got something out of this, if you like this, like the video, subscribe, go to rewirewellness.co. The link is in the description. Start building your plan and accessing our free guide today. See you next time.